everyone, I am Ben. I am back with hashtag IAMWHOLE for another amazing piece of content for Digital Detox Day. I'm surrounded by so many amazing human beings. I've got Ellie, Kelechi, Ben, and Veronica. And we are going to be talking all things overthinking. And I don't want to overthink it too much because I'm going to lose my train of thought and it'll get too deep and it'll get too dark and we don't have enough time for that. So I'm going to jump straight in with what I think is quite a simple question. What is overthinking? Don't overthink it.
It's a hard one. I feel like overthinking is something that I've really reconsidered recently since learning more about my brain. I think as someone that is autistic and has ADHD, my brain is literally wired to overthink. Like I have 1,000 thoughts a minute and I have to like dissect things and like understand things and get context. And I think in the past, I like thought that I was overthinking and worrying and anxiety and like all this kind of stuff. And now I'm like, overthinking is just my thinking. Like, I think it is, something that we're all kind of prone to do. And I think it is this kind of like, I don't know, almost it's like cool girl stigma of, like, don't overthink it. Like, don't be too much. Like, just play it cool. Like, don't overthink it. And I'm like, but my brain won't stop. So yeah, I think it's almost something that I have definitely struggled with, but I'm almost like coming to terms with. I think that it's just, I'm always going to be an overthinker,
like
and that's
struggling
just what
but
it
pushing
is.
through it.
Yeah.
I love that. What does overthinking look like for you? Because we talked earlier about FOMO and I got 3 different answers and I was like, bugger. So I'd love to know if you have a different take on what overthinking looks like or feels like for you.
Yeah, I think that overthinking can be a result of trauma as well. So we, first of all, we live in a society that is so image based, and there are so many kind of like things that we need to kind of check off in terms of etiquette, whether it's fashion, whether it's this, whether it's that. Like, you want to know that you're hitting all the marks, otherwise you don't want to be ostracized from society, right? So you're having to think all of the time, am I abiding by the rules that would make me still acceptable in any group that I'm in? And so that's part of where, like, I think sometimes the overthinking kicks in. Like, should I shake that person's hand? Should I have done it? Was I meant to kiss 2 times? Oh my.
Always kiss 2 times.
So you start thinking of all of these things. But on the other side, if you've experienced trauma, as I did when I was a child, it can also be connected to hypervigilance, where you are having to think about every situation that you're in, like, where's the nearest door? Where's this? Where's that? You're always thinking about these things in order to protect yourself. Is a self-preservation kind of thing, like a mode that you go
Your
in.
escape route.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're okay. But when you break all of those things down, whether it's in a societal aspect or a trauma-based aspect, what is the foundation of all of it, I believe, is fear. Whether it's a fear of being ostracized or a fear of whatever happened to you happening again. And so overthinking, for me, I believe, is rooted in fear.
And for you, Veronica, what does overthinking feel like, look like for you?
Oh, overthinking for me is, it rules my life. It rules my everyday. It rules absolutely everything that I do in any given circumstance. I will always be trying to find the right way, the correct way, the best way to do something. And then the process of overthinking then gets me distracted along the way, because even mundane things like being sat at home and thinking to myself, oh, I'm going to make a cup of tea. And then in between that, I then think about, well, what do I need to do after that? And then I start thinking about all of the things that I need to do that day. So then I start making lists. And then I start making lists of lists. And then I start making lists of lists of compartmentalized parts of those lists. And then before I know it, I've forgotten what it was that I was even supposed to do first, which was to go and make a cup of tea. So then I'll get up and put the kettle on. And then I'll realize that I'd not thought to buy tea bags. And then I'm thinking about...
That was on yesterday's list.
Yeah, exactly. But then I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I'll go out and get tea bags, but what else do I need? And then it's a constant sort of like mind map of things to do, things that should be happening. And for me, it literally rules my life, overthinking, and I get distracted by it. And before I know it, I'm back at square one. Thinking again.
Thinking is not great. If you're thinking at home, stop. And Ben, what's your feeling, understanding? Where do you sit with overthinking?
Yeah, I think overthinking at its very core comes down to a fear of failure. And so for me, you know, any decision you make, however mundane, whether whether you go for the second kiss when you're saying hello, which by the way is incredibly awkward if you do that and they don't, because you meet in the middle and you end up having a snog, and that's a difficult hello.
Actually, I say go for the snog. Break down what is acceptable.
It depends on the situation, right?
It's not
a
great
wedding or
with your
something.
dad.
It's the bride's mum, so that's not a good one.
Oh, but, no, always snog the bride's mum.
It's time and a place, maybe later. So I think, but it comes from a fear of failure.
Sure.
And so overthinking any decision, whether it's the 2 kisses or one, or whether it's a job decision or whether it's a relationship decision, overthinking comes from a fear of failure. And some people are more susceptible to being scared of failure than others. And this is where it links into trauma. If you've experienced trauma or seen how damaging and how awful and how painful a traumatic experience can be, you are going to now be hardwired to want to avoid any sort of failure. And I think it's really interesting, this view of overthinking in the world at the moment, because failure is almost very glorified in the world. Everyone's like, oh, fail, it's really good for you. It's like, oh, let's learn to love failing. But at the same time, when you do fail, it hurts. It really hurts.
It's the worst thing in the world.
And so it's a really interesting relationship at the moment, because everyone's like has this bubbly, fun, rose-tinted view of failure, but every single person is hardwired to overthink to avoid failing, and so we do. Even if it's a simple decision, we go, but what if this goes wrong, or what if this isn't perfect? True. And let's face it, every decision in life is going to have flaws and cons. It's never going to be a perfect decision, but overthinking is just focusing on every single aspect of what might happen. And then you end up not making a decision at all, which unfortunately is one of the cons of making a decision in the first place. So that's how I would look at overthinking.
Yeah. And I don't want to trigger anyone, but I think one of the brilliant things about conversations around mental health topics is hearing other people experiencing similar things to you helps you feel seen. It helps you feel like you're not mad, right? I think that every day. Well, that someone tells me in my ear, but it's fine. But I would love to know what things you overthink, so that there might be someone at home watching going, oh, I overthink about that. I thought that was irrational, but so if you feel like comfortable in sharing, I'd love to know what you overthink.
I would say definitely like social situations. I think, especially like as an autistic person, I probably don't interact socially in the same way that a lot of people do.
Sure.
And I think for me, it's like finding that balance of like, okay, I want to be true to myself, but I also want to be liked. So like how, when is it my turn to talk? Like, am I talking too much? Am I not talking enough? Like, am I fun? Am I boring? Am I, in their face? Am I not enough? Like literally trying to find that balance of like, where am I still being me, which is something that I'm very aware of at the moment, like learning to be myself, but like still wanting to be like a palatable me. And I think so social situations, definitely, it's like I saw a TikTok the other day and it was like, you come back from a social situation, it's almost like a debrief with your brain. Like I'm like, woo, I've had a great time. And my brain's like, why did you leave 3 seconds pause after they ask you what your name was? Like literally like,
flashback.
Literally giving you a rundown. Like you literally remember one tiny thing. Like, I think it's social situations and just those tiny moments that probably nobody else notices, but you go home and you're like, I went for the second kiss. They didn't. Like literally it's those tiny things that no one else notices and you're just like, why did I do that? But I think socially is the biggest thing for me.
It's interesting that you say palatable, and it's something you talked about earlier about fitting in. Is that something that you overthink about?
Fitting in, maybe not so much. I feel like being like, a black woman in Britain, I say the Western world, there are certain things that maybe you notice in certain situations that you're like, should that have gone that way? And then you voice it. So my social media platform is really constructed around like looking at the minutiae, looking at the things that maybe go unnoticed and actually make us in one way or another co-conspirators in a world that isn't actually serving us all. So sometimes I'll be on social media, I'll notice something that maybe other people haven't seen, and then I'll talk about it and I'll think, look at me, party pooper. Like people were enjoying that and I've just brought this perception to it. But at the same time, if we don't have that perception or that perspective, then how do we kind of move forward from there? So like Ben was saying earlier about the fear of failure and things like that, I think that when we overthink, it's because we're not in the present, right? It's either we're thinking about the past, a trauma-based thing, or we're thinking about the future that doesn't exist yet and the past is already gone. We're not actually in the present. We're trying to detach from the present. So we're overthinking all of the things that could happen. And so when I have those situations where maybe I've recorded a video that I know needs to go out, I have to say to myself, in this present moment, this is important and this is pertinent, and I'm just gonna have to do it come what may. It just needs to go out. And one of the videos that I remember being so kind of worried about and overthinking, I ended up getting over 2 million views on it because people were like, thank you for saying that. And so there is something about kind of letting all of those voices quieten down and just do the thing that in the present moment you know to be the important thing. But yeah, that would be my thing.
Yeah. And Ben, what do you overthink
What don't I overthink?
I mean, that is a good answer. That is a very good answer.
I think overthinking has a place in almost every decision. Naturally, human beings, we don't want to mess up. We don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to get hurt. So naturally, we sort of lean into all these things. I think for me, the overthinking that's caused me most pain has actually been what you were saying about trauma. And actually, people forget that you can overthink things in the past.
Sure.
And unfortunately, you can't change anything that's happened in the past. So it's a very useless activity, but
so
we do.
Annoying, right?
Everyone's heard, the grief process. There's a process in that grief process called bargaining. And that's the what ifs, right? What if I did this differently? What if I did this? And everyone knows it's such a pointless thing to do because you can't go back and what if your way back into it. You can't. But so I lost my brother to suicide in 2018. He was 15, I was 17 years old. He got diagnosed with clinical depression in September 2017, 3 months before. And I never talked to him about it. Sure. I had no idea what that was. I then, obviously he died. Me and my mum found him. It was a horrendous situation. And off the back of that, in the talons of trauma and in that grief, my brain just became so intoxicated with the idea that I was the reason this had happened. And then for months, for years, there was a part of my brain that was just like overthinking what I was doing on that day or those 3 months. And it was just a cycle that you could not escape. And it took a huge amount of therapy and counseling to try and change that mindset. And now, I always look at overthinking as not necessarily a good thing, but a positive thing, because it means you have that ability to feel, and it means you have an ability to care. And anxiety, people get very annoyed by having anxiety in life and get very annoyed about overthinking situations. And they'll sit there and overthink something and they're like, oh, why can't I just make a decision? Anxiety is an incredible talent and an incredibly good thing to have, because at the end of the day, it's your body and your brain trying to look after yourself. And that's all it is. So for me, anxiety is it's a good thing. And the way you sort of reframe that is don't beat yourself up for feeling anxious or overthinking something. Yeah. Actually, the first thing you should do is be like, thanks, brain. Thanks for looking out for me. Because that's all it's trying to do. Overthinking, anxiety, all it's trying to do is help you stay safe at the end of the day. And it can be very, very quick to beat yourself up for feeling like that. But actually, it's not trying to hurt you. It's not the enemy. It's not you versus the overthinking. It's you and the overthinking versus the world. And sometimes it's easy to forget that. Yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for sharing that. That was really deep and personal. So thank you so much. And obviously, everyone at home, you're going to take so much for that. Veronica, I know you overthink about everything, but what's the biggest thing that you overthink about? If you feel like you can distill it. If not, you are allowed to just say everything.
I think that is a given. As I was saying before, it does rule my life. And that is something that has been a new development in my healing process. As somebody who went through a bit of a traumatic time recently, I've started piecing myself back together. And I've discovered that overthinking is this huge part of my life that is stopping me living in the present and moving forwards to a destination. Being in the public eye now and having all these expectations on me to look a certain way, to post so much on social media, behave in a certain way, and represent myself as my own brand and my own business has really brought about all of these decisions that I never realized that I would have to make. Before I was on that television program, I would go to work, I would have my job, and then I would go and do my gigs. And my life was very easy for me, getting up and the routine of life. And now that I'm thrust into this world where I am the main person who makes all of the decisions in my life, I now find myself at this crossroads where I'm trying to find the best way of doing things, but in doing so, it's stopping me from making any progress whatsoever. I was wanting a website to go along with my persona so that I could reach out to people about where my gigs were going to be and if there was any merchandise and all of that stuff. And then when it came to making tough decisions, I just couldn't deal with it. And I have not spoken to the guy who was going to do my website for 2 years because...
If you are Veronica's web designer, don't worry. She will get back to you.
Yeah, I will pay you.
Do send an invoice.
No, but the truth of the matter is that all of these decisions bombard my brain so much that I then shut off from it. And I'm like, oh, I'll deal with that another time. And then before you know it, another day rolls round and you're like, okay, so how am I going to deal with this? And then for me personally, it's the lists. Wow, I've got this costume that I need to get ready for this gig. And then there's this thing, and then the social media posts. What am I going to post about? Well, if I'm going to do this post, I should really post, once every 5 days. And then before I know it, I'm in this sort of tunnel of all these things I've got to do and not knowing where to start. So I don't get anywhere. So I think it's just a part of who I am at the moment, and I think it is a very negative thing, really. It's especially when you don't have a direction, and I think overthinking stops me personally from having that goal and that direction because I'm struggling to figure out how to get there.
I think what's really important to know is that I think we sometimes feel isolated by our own brains. We feel like we're the only one that's doing this. And I think, if overthinking is that silky little voice that's telling you that you're not good enough or that you're not coping. And for me, overthinking shows up in when I have to make like sizable decisions based on what will be the next throw of the dice. So last summer, I attempted to move. And for one reason or another, it just didn't work. That put me in bed for 12 weeks. I literally couldn't do anything. I would say I was frozen in indecision for 12 weeks. And that breakdown has not left. It's still here. Hi, if you're watching at home. And yeah, it's those things. But it's important that we've touched a little bit about mental health. But how does overthinking play into depression, anxiety, catastrophizing? I think that's something that you are clearly doing. It's something that I am definitely doing. I don't know who wants to jump on that. That relationship.
I think that it's really easy to, if you're having all these extra thoughts, naturally some of them are going to be worries.
I love that you said extra thoughts.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I guess thinking is natural. It's the overthinking that becomes a problem. It's not the thinking. And I think it's so for me, my brain is so busy all the time. So 80% of the thoughts might be positive, but 20% of them still naturally are going to be negative. Just like a statistics thing. If there's that many thoughts, some of them are going to be worries or some of them are going to be negative. And I think it's if you're unable to separate the thoughts as just thoughts bouncing around in your head as from actual truths, then you hear those 20% of negative thoughts and then it puts you in the anxiety or it puts you in the negative mindset because it's so easy to hear that thought in your head and not be able to think that is just 1 out of 100 thoughts bouncing in my head. You hear it and you're like, no, that's the thing, and then you worry about it and then you're stuck on this thing that's not even true. It's just a thought. It's just 1 out of 100 ideas bouncing around your head. But I think that for me in the past has been what's led to the anxiety, not being able to, I think that was a big breakthrough for me to stopping being so anxious, realizing that a thought is just a thought. Just because, I think the therapist once said to me, just because you think it doesn't make it true. And that was a chant thing. And I was like, just because I think it doesn't make it true. And I think being able to do that has stopped me getting so anxious because I'm more able now. It's still not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a conscious thing that I have to remind myself, but I can now pull myself up and be like, no, it's just a thought. It's just bouncing around in there. It's not going to happen. I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to be anxious. But yeah, I think that is for me how it triggers the anxiety.
It's almost like they're colleagues. They're working together. They're separate things, but if you address them as one thing, it's probably not going to work. It's seeing them as separate ideas. I don't know if that resonates with anyone.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, like basically from what Ellie said and from what Ben said, when we're looking at the thoughts, we're looking at the things that we feel and looking at them as just what they are, because that's compassion. Like the word that we're looking at there is compassion, being able to show compassion to ourselves for the things that we feel, because oftentimes in society, the currency that a lot of things that are happening around us, in and around us, is shame. Shame is the main currency that's being used, and we're all scared. If the fear is of failure, or we just have this like fear that's just like a cloud following us all of the time, what we're scared of in the failure is the shame that we think is going to be a result of it. So whatever we're worried about, it's the shame that Brene Brown talks about. It's the shame that we're worried about. We're worried about people going, ha ha, look at you. And that most times doesn't happen. And if it does, that's on them, not really you. Like you can just show
it's
yourself.
It's a them problem, not
it's not a you problem. And so you can show yourself the compassion, and that's something I had to learn throughout the years, especially when you have certain types of trauma as a child. You carry so much shame with you; it becomes like your identity. You are so scared of failing. You're so scared of like even being criticized, because shame is just there all of the time. And then it's you having to go, it's all right. Like I'm, one of my big sayings are like, I'm just a baby girl. Like whatever happens, I'm just a baby girl. Like I can't control all things. Yes. I can only make the next decision and the next decision as it pertains to me. It's like Veronica, when you were saying all of these decisions, well, I can't make 16,000 decisions. I can only make the next one. And I'll go with the next one. But if the next one, I'm scared of it because I've catastrophized it. Like if I flop at that thing, I'm going to get shamed for it. There have been so many things that I flopped at in my life and I'm still here. There's been so many heartbreaks. There's been so many losses, so much grief, so much mourning, yet I'm still here. So if the worst hasn't broken me, I don't know what else possibly could. And to me, that is part of like the way that I show compassion to myself in that regard.
Yeah, I would just like to touch really quickly. We've talked about failure quite a lot. What does failure mean to each of you? Like what that worst case scenario that overthinking takes you to, what does that look like for each of you? Because I think a lot of people, their failure feels quite unique, but a lot of us feel like the same. Veronica, what does failure look like to you?
Well, failure changes forms throughout people's lives.
Failure is difficult.
Oh, I'm getting to an age now. So
26.
I've seen failure in different aspects of my life, and then realize that it just morphs into a new failure once the first one happens. Sure. There's then a new one that comes along. Yeah. So when it comes to that particular aspect of my life, I feel like I'm great at being a failure.
Sure. Like, it's almost like knowing your enemy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's something to be ashamed about. No. It's nothing to be afraid of, because everybody is constantly failing at everything until they are successful. But that doesn't mean that success is not something that is a pinnacle and it's a peak and then it's going to be that way forever. A success is only at one goal, and then it's you move on to the next thing, and that could be a failure. So I think when it comes to failure, that I think a lot of people view failure as the ultimate death sentence, whereas for me personally, I see it as a friend, and I say hello to it every time.
Like that opportunity to reflect.
Yeah, because it keeps happening to me.
Not from where we're sitting, I promise exactly. We see only success.
But I think it's like not being able to see the wood for the trees. I think people view failure as people hold it to a higher standard, and they people seem to celebrate failure a lot more. Certainly in society, a lot of people like to see other people fail. I think that is something that a lot of people harbor within themselves. Sure. And I don't think anybody's immune from that. But it's that relationship of learning to accept that failure is not a bad thing.
No. And Ben, what is that one thing, like at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning? What is that one thing you're afraid of failure?
Oh, it's the overthinking thing. Then there's this fear of failure. Every single thing. It's relationships, it's work, it's socializing, it combines everything together. And failure is an interesting one, because I think we are getting into a point now where, we've got this rhetoric of, failure is the path to success, and it's so true. And failure is something to embrace and be like, if you go for a job and you get rejected, that's not necessarily on you. That just means you need to rethink where you're going.
Situation.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in you know, fate and things working out, and I think life has just a funny way of working out. Yeah. You know, if you just keep trying. And look, if a path gets blocked, that's not you know, to say that you're any worse person. No. And you know, we've just had exam results come out the other week, and so many people will have opened their exam results and felt like an absolute failure. But you know, when this happened, I put on my Instagram, I was like, you're the same person that you were yesterday, and you didn't think you were a failure then. So what's changed?
And what's also, changed? Like, can anyone remember what they got? No, when was the last time somebody asked you for your A-level
What's
results?
Your GCSE results? I don't even know what a GCSE is.
No, I blocked school out. I blacked out about it, so it's gone from my memory. But yeah, I think it's so true that, you know, overthinking and failure, it's not nice. It's not something we want to do, but it's almost to think you're never going to have to do it is to not be human.
Yeah, right? But it's like, what is it though? Like Veronica was even saying, like, what is it? It morphs every time it changes. And especially if you're somebody that's really high functioning, the moment, that's some of the worst times that I've had. Like, I've achieved something and other people are celebrating me, and really already in my head, I've gone on to, so what's the next thing? What's the next thing that I need to do? Definitely. Like, I need those achievements in order for me to feel something. Yeah. And that's not a good look. It's not it's not where you want to be, right? And so the failure will start morphing. It's like, you did that. All right, go and do this next thing then. Let's see how you go. And it can't be that. You have to be in a kind of like a cohesive general state within yourself and within your mind at all times. And for like context, I did a show, a live show of my podcast at Bloomsbury. It sold out. Congrats. So excited. Thank you. It was really exciting. So naturally I thought, gonna go bigger. So book the Sadler's Wells. And so that's 3 times the size of Bloomsbury. And so over 2/3 have sold of the tickets, right? So like over 1,100 and something tickets have sold. But because in my mind, I know that the capacity of that building is 1,005, you can't tell me a single thing. I have not succeeded because I have not sold out that thing. So it took somebody sitting with me and plus my therapist going, yeah, but you've over doubled the last place that you were in. So that's success. Sure, it's a success. But because of, I feel like, you know, a culmination of all of these things happening, trauma, all of these things, I'm like, no, because until it's that, then I haven't succeeded. So I then need to sit with myself and think to myself, again, it's what we're talking about, compassion. What is your idea of success? Because you need to think about the fact that over 1,000 people want to see just you. Yeah. Yeah. That should be enough.
Yeah.
But the seats, you know, like
it's empty spaces, and that haunts you. And it's overthinking. It's overthinking.
And I think that that's important for transparency to be like, even though other people, again, it's perception, other people might look at that and be like, yay, celebrate. Obsessed. Like, well done. Yeah.
No.
It's not gone in here.
It's really difficult because I think overthinking is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
The day my book came out, I was the most miserable person in the world because everyone around me was so happy and all I could do was, that wasn't right. I had to change this. And also, tomorrow, what comes next? Like, I'm stepping off this platform and everyone else is now going to want to see me fail. And it's so scary. And what's really interesting is that we've all talked about how other people will perceive us, shame, fear of failure. Do you think social media makes that shit worse?
Yeah, I think like my thing of failure is like not living up to expectations, and I think social media just quadruples.
It makes you overthink
those
more
expectations, like just silly things, like for example, a weekend away. I am an honest
that?
Like if I went on a city break to Milan with my friend, and I'm an autistic person, I don't have the same battery as most people, but for me it was like, well, if I don't show that I'm having a good time all the time, then I failed, because I'm not having a good time on this holiday if I don't do all the activities and visit all the places and take all the photos and eat at all the restaurants. If I say that I'm going to Milan and then it's me lying in bed in my hotel room at 9 o'clock because I'm burnt out, then that's me failing at that expectation. But like, why? If I've gone and had a really nice time and that's involved me going to bed at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock,
that's a holiday.
Then but like, I think it just adds that. I think failure is, for me, it's like being scared of not living up to expectations, and those expectations are just so much more public because of social media. And it's almost like there's almost this pressure to always be like showing that you're having a good time, but that good time might not be a good time for you.
Sure.
It's almost like living up to this life that everyone's kind of told you is the nice life, like the busyness and the doing all the things and the going out at night and the seeing loads of people and the, I don't know, going to loads of places. But that doesn't actually feel nice for me.
Yeah.
But like, why do I then feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm failing? Because surely it's better to be doing what does feel nice. But because it's not living up to that like expectation, then it feels like I'm like failing at having a good time almost, because I'm not having a good time in the way that I'm expected to have a good time.
And how does social media work for you? What does it make you overthink?
Yeah, 100%, because I compare myself to other
comparison,
people.
Veronica, stop. That's the worst thing you can do.
And the worst part about it is I've always been an advocate for being individual and not comparing yourselves to other people.
But Dr. Cure Thyself, we can't do that for ourselves.
I know. I know. Do what I say, not what I do. But I can't seem to take my own advice, and
I wish you could.
I can't help but, you know, you look at other people's, to the amount of likes they've got, the amount of followers they've got, where they are in the world, and I'm sat in my living room. It's the kind of thing that it kills joy, is what you were saying, that I think social media is also a culprit of that in a little way, because when it comes to social media, we get to see everybody's perfect world.
The best bits.
Yeah, we get to see everybody's perfect world. And also, I think when it comes to social media, everybody goes to it to escape from their own reality for a moment. So they don't necessarily want to see the negative side of people's lives, which then there's not really an outlet for people when it comes to social media to talk about struggles and to talk about their problems. So it goes back to that whole notion of isolation. When you are then stuck within your own thoughts, how can I express myself that may not always be in a positive light to people through social media? I think it's almost impossible. And I think that when it comes to social media, it's a snapshot of a certain aspect of life in general, and doesn't allow people to communicate to the full extent that people would want to. And I think certainly overthinking can be a part of that as well, because for me personally, I'm constantly searching for how can I communicate with people about these feelings.
I think it's funny as well, just carrying on from what you were saying, I think it's really funny how certain people nowadays on certain social networks, when you do certain jobs, are always like, oh, young people these days have it so easy, snowflake generation. And you're like, hang on, when in history has every single person been living on a stage? So that's what we're doing, right, with social media. You've got, even as, we've all got following and stuff, but even everyday people, you're living on a stage. That's what we're doing. So
we're
exactly
all professional people.
And so what happens is, we've all got pressure in our lives, and that comes from parents, friends. It comes from, pressure within ourselves and standards we set ourselves. And it comes from social media now, because you have to be appearing to do well. And it's like what you were saying about the books, and it was like we were saying about your podcast. There is so much pressure now to always be better than you were the day before. Like, whoa, take a break. When has that ever been? Like, come on, you've done well. That's fine. Take a month off. Don't be that good for a month. Like, there's no pressure to do that, really. The pressure is from within ourselves, and this perceived pressure of social media and our friends and our family. And I just think it's so sad. Like, it's robbing joy of it. That you're so right. It's robbing joy. And it's like every single person is living on a stage. And I think, this is brings us back to why we're all here. Detox Day. Get off that stage. Walk into the wing. Give yourself some time away from that, because the eyeballs are on you, and that is an intense feeling, a really intense feeling. And so how are you going to really be okay at saying I'm okay with failing when you're standing on that stage? No one wants to fail on a stage. People want to fail quietly, but we don't have that option anymore in today's world. Failing quietly is the comfortable thing, but we are forced onto a stage. Hello, everyone. Today I'm performing
failure.
Ben can't spell, or Ben's gonna snog the mum. So that's the pressure that social media has.
And it's funny that you say pressure, because a lot of people like to say, diamonds are formed under pressure. But do you know what the really brilliant thing is? You get diamonds onto the cutting board. Sometimes you'll touch, they will explode, right? Pressure is not good for you. Like, I am not freshly steamed broccoli. I don't need to be green and tender. Like, we don't need pressure. We don't need it. And I think there's this idea that we kind of do need pressure to be good people. Like, it's that thing that keeps me going. I don't want to keep going. I want to stop. I want to sit down. Like, when was the last time you just sat down and did nothing? I can't remember that.
No, it's so important, as you say. And I think that it's even funny how you mentioned diamonds, because diamonds really didn't have any value until De Beers as a company told us that they have value. So diamonds and pressure, no, I don't want the diamonds and I don't want the pressure. Leave me alone. And
I won't say no to the diamonds.
I don't mind those lab thingy, you know, those lab cultivated.
Okay,
I can do a bit of that, but but as Ben was saying, like, we don't get a chance to kind of leave this stage, and we're seeing other social media platforms absolutely like booming at the moment, because everyday people can just go on there and amass like millions of followers just doing their day-to-day things, so they feel like they need to do more of it. I call it happy to announce culture. I talk about it often, especially when you're in the industry that we're in. You can't wait for that moment where you're like, happy to announce, guys,
I've got news. Spoiler alert, next week for my announcement.
No, but then it's the I've got an announcement about the announcement.
I'm going to do a soft launch.
And you're just like, no, I don't want to do happy to announce culture anymore, because it's like I'm waiting for that moment, that thing. So actually, I've kind of gone ahead before our detox day, and I just deactivated all my profiles. Like, I've just deactivated my Instagram, my Twitter. I just took them all offline.
Oh my
because
word, Kelechi. I'm enthralled. I'm like, be more Kelechi. Switch it off, but keep watching.
I don't like feeling beholden to anything.
Okay.
And for me,
is that something that you feel, those social media apps, you are beholden?
Yeah, more so because I feel like so many people rely on me to be their metric.
You owe someone something.
Yeah, like, Kelechi, I need to know how you feel about this new segment, so I know how to feel about this new segment.
Yeah, you set the tone.
So, all right, I'm not here then. Figure it out. Figure it out. Like,
do your own work, baby.
But use your intuition. That's why I love like tarot and astrology so much, and it's such a kind of like instrumental factor in my life, because it's about training your intuition. It's about your inner voice, and I think that that's actually how you stop overthinking, because you can quieten all of the louder voices and really go to the quietest voice within you that actually always remembers the way, always remembers the destination, and let that guide you. But if I'm the one telling you all the time that, well, this is how I feel about this and this is how I feel, you can't really ever figure that out for yourself. And more so, I can't keep thinking about it in terms of how it's serving other people. For me, I just don't want to be online. I don't want people to be, I don't want to come back online and see all of these DMs or tags. I don't want to see anything. So you can't tag me now. You can't DM me. It's fine. When I choose to
send
return
a letter
by pigeon post, do that.
NE41. Have a PO box, baby.
But,
go once a year.
Just take a break. And I think that that's important, to be able to take back the power and say, like, I'll be back when I want to be back.
On your terms.
I've got other things that I enjoy and other avenues for me to express myself. It doesn't necessarily have to be through that medium.
Yeah, I do also think as well, when it comes to social media, in the beginnings of social media,
it was fun,
and a lot of it was about connecting with family, and having your friendship circles, your actual friendship circles, connected online. And then with the introduction of Twitter, getting those first few celebrities on board, then it was a way for people to connect with people outside their friends circle to the extent of it being celebrities. And I think then that bred into people realizing then that they could become famous themselves by being online, which then brings business opportunities and brand deals. And so it's become this mix of lifestyle, socializing, family, and celebrity culture as well, all rolled into one. And I think a lot of people don't know how to separate them sharing their life with their business venture or with their private life. And so I think it's just become a huge mix of everything through its evolution.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I do talk to a lot of people who do the same thing as me, that are like influencers. Do you have the burner account? Do you have the private account? Do you want to answer yes or no? You don't have to. I do. But no one knows it.
What do you post on it?
I don't.
You don't?
It's for watching other people.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I
nice.
was going to say. I was like, I do have one, but I don't post on it.
No,
I
it's not for posting. It's for like sleep watching.
Yeah, no, I don't, but I feel like it would be a good thing to
Like
do
a private one,
because
like the Kardashians have them.
yeah, and I
Not that that's a good thing.
That's a good model, is it?
Second time I've done that. I don't like
Brilliant.
them. Like him.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like now I rely on my public accounts also to do like both jobs. Like I am rubbish at keeping in contact with like family and friends, but I'm like, oh, they know what I'm doing because it's on my story. But it's like
You
they're
have your
only
family on there.
not on my normal accounts. Yeah,
I block everyone.
Oh.
Sorry.
Do you?
Yeah, I don't want family. I'm not accountable. I do not want this to be in the newsletter. It's my business. Yeah, no one. I have no family on my account. No one.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's
Sorry,
what
Mum.
I feel like. That's not right that I rely on that. Like my grandma has the same access to my life as some stranger that's following me. Whereas I'm
Yeah.
like, they deserve more. They deserve the one-to-one contact because they're
She should
family.
be here.
Come sit.
Thanks, Grandma, come.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it has just got mixed up along the way. That's what the information I give out to the world. Whether you're a stranger that I've never met with a great profile picture and no face, or whether you're literally my best friend, because I don't have the energy to like stay in contact with both. So it's just like, well, if I just put it all out there, then everyone can take what
It's
they
that
need.
kind of thing with social media for me. At the moment, it's utilized for me to speak to everybody, but at the same time speak to nobody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like everyone in one go, but at the same time, then that's
How do
not
you
having a
switch off,
conversation.
then? How do you
Yeah.
switch off from that? Because for me, I treat it's pure business. Like when I'm on it, I'm business Ben, and I can switch it off because it's my job. Because if you want me, you probably have my number. It's just my mum. But like that's how I'm able to like have that little bit of a break from it. Otherwise, I don't see how you can have that break from it.
Yeah, I feel like I've not got there
I've not
yet.
thought that
Are
through.
you introverted, Ellie?
Yeah,
Are you an introvert?
I spend I feel like I'm a combination. I feel
Are
like
you an extrovert, introvert?
I feel like I'm an introvert. Like social situations are energy expensive to me,
Yeah. Sure.
but then when I'm in a social situation, if it's with somebody
Yeah.
that I am like close with,
Feel safe with.
then
Yeah.
I am probably quite outgoing. But I feel like it is. Yeah, I think social interaction is energy expensive. So if I'm like, well, I can just put it on there and then
Okay,
it's
that makes sense.
taken
for you,
away,
energy-wise.
Yeah, I
take
ask
it back,
because I'm
that's good.
introverted and I do exactly the
Yeah.
same thing. Like I don't have a burner, don't have a Finsta, don't have any of that because my view of it is like all of you can get all of this in one go. Like you all figure it out. Like you'll figure it out. I mean, I've got a close friends list on like Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you've
Few.
got like circles on Twitter. So if I really want just a specific amount of people to see something, then I'll post it there. I don't post about my son, for instance, on socials generally. They might see a fingernail, they might see a hand, but on close friends, they might get a filter over his face. Like they're
Sure.
not going to get his whole face. Things like that. But I couldn't imagine having another page
No,
and then
yeah.
have to
Yeah.
give people extra information because they might respond.
I've turned my story replies off for everybody. No one can reply to my
Don't talk to
stories
me.
now.
Yeah.
Like
I turned
nobody
it off,
could.
I turned it
Yeah,
off before deactivated.
I should
Don't
really
talk to
do
me.
that. Actually.
it's so nice. It's just like I can
yeah.
just present all my information to you. There you go. Have
You
it.
can leave.
Yeah.
That's your boundary, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
To me, I just like with this whole extra Instagram account, I just struggle. I think it comes down to why we're on social media, and not enough people really step back. And we're giving people, Detox Day, giving some people the opportunity to take that step back and really ask themselves,
Why?
Why are you on social media? I'm not on social media because I want my friends to see what I'm doing. If they're my friends, they're with me. They're in real life. And I think social media is very, I mean, look, there's a company now called Metaverse. We're talking about Metaverse. Like, come on. No, life is happening out the window, not on your phone. And it's very, very easy to be drawn into that being life and that universe being life. And for some people, it gives them ability to have identities and that is an amazing tool, but life goes on outside the window.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's really important to understand why you're on social media. And when it comes down to this overthinking thing, we sort of follow the crowd in so many different terms. We do that. We're human beings. That's literally why we're here. It's why we've survived this long. It's because we're social crowd following animals. That's what we do. But I think it comes down to why are we on social media? I'm not on social media for my friends to see what I'm doing because they are there with me. And in terms of the messaging and the boundaries that you've got to set with social media, I don't know. I just don't see the point. Everyone's got my number. Call me, text me. If I care about you, you have my number or my email or something, And I think that's a real boundary to set. It's like, Why are you on social media? Why are you interested in becoming famous on social media? Really? Are you doing it because that's a job you really want to pursue? Or are you doing it because fame looks like a fun thing to have? Like, I think any of us would say, actually, that the sort of popularity messaging content everyone thinks is fun, it's not. It's terrible.
It's
It's exhausting, and it's you know, I'm not even large scale at all, but even the minutest amount of attention, it's exhausting. But everyone thinks it's an amazing thing. It's like, if you want that to be your job, then fine, pursue it like any other job, but don't go into it because you've got this
don't think there are no cons.
Exactly.
It's pros and cons.
Think about why you're on social media, and take this day to think about why you're on social media. I certainly will be. And you know, there's accounts that I have on different social media platforms. I'm like, why do I have that? I'm not really interested in being on that, because we all know how it is. You have social media for one purpose, and you'll sit there on Instagram looking at some dog jumping down the stairs, or some, I don't know, some cat that's like jumping at some food, I don't know, and then you can waste hours and hours and hours. But all I'd say to people is focus on why you're on social media, and then remember that life happens outside the window, not on the phone.
True. But I think that with anything, with any great innovation, there is like a very human need for something, and then they build upon it. So as humans, we can't actually survive without connection. Like they say, like no man is an island, that we need human connection. But as you say, the real connections, the true connections, probably most times happen like outside of social media. On the plus side, we wouldn't be able to have the globalization of like so many movements and being able to amplify so many different things happening in the world, like in terms of a global community, if we didn't have that. But of course, the cons are people can just send you wild messages out of nowhere. Like you're just minding your business eating toast, and then someone tells you you're ugly. You're like, what? What? I was enjoying my marmalade.
true.
What is this?
Like a good day.
If I'd have wanted to know that, I'd have gone to the mirror.
Yeah, like leave me alone. I've got my things already. How are you telling me like I'm ugly? What? So like that's what I think about, like the very human need for connection and belonging and having a sense of community that maybe has been usurped into something else. And as you say, like, let's go back to what it is. If it's connection that we need, is it what we're really getting? Because if that's not what we're getting from it, then maybe a recalibration is sort of needed.
I do think there is a softer side to that. Certainly the queer community thrives online because if you don't live in London or Manchester, there is no one. Like, I don't know anyone within 30 miles of me that is queer, right? And so I use social media to make sure that people feel connected.
Yeah, it's the same like with the neurodivergent community. Yeah, I didn't know anybody like growing up in real life that was neurodivergent, and now it's like, oh, I have access to people who I actually understand, and they understand my brain, and I've never had that before.
And did that allow you to see something that you didn't see in yourself before?
I 100% would never have like gone after my diagnosis if I hadn't have come across neurodivergent creators online.
And I think that's the brilliant thing. We're talking about social media, we're talking about Digital Detox Day, and if you looked at this conversation, you'd be like, oh wow, social media is rubbish. There's good bits, there's bad bits, it's shades of grey. As much as we talk about the stuff that we hate, like I never want to see more genitals in my DMs ever again. Stop it, Brian, stop it.
It's funny how old it gets very fast.
So much. But I was watching a TikTok where someone had it audio described, and it was, they described it as because they were they're blind, and it was described as a tiny mushroom. So if you send that picture,
amazing.
But yeah, there is that ability to connect, and I think that is the beautiful thing, that with all the crap that we take, as long as we're masterful of how we're using it, of knowing that it's a tool, that it's not our life, that yes, there is life outside that window, I think there's an ability to be able to cope a bit better with it. And I think sort of coming towards the end of this conversation, I don't know whether we have a concrete answer, but I would love to sort of get from you all how we can reduce the time we spend overthinking, or the tools we use that help us when we are overthinking. Ellie, I'd love to come to you because I've watched you this whole conversation. I think this is something we really should talk about.
Yeah, so this is a Tangle. It's a type of stim toy. So stimming is something that autistic people do to almost like self-regulate and soothe. So it is like, if my mind is racing, it's like something to like bring myself back to. So I think that is a big part in like what helps me. I think it is that bringing yourself back to the moment again. And for me, that's by stimming and having something to do with my hands. And it's almost like using up that hyperactivity rather than my brain going, okay, well, I'm not getting the stimulation because of how my brain works. So let's look for it in like worrying about something or questioning something or thinking about something. Instead, it's like, okay, no, I'm just topping it up with my hands rather than my brain. I think another thing that I do to reduce overthinking is like reducing the amount of decisions I have to make wherever possible, like automating as much of my life as I can. So I know that food is a big thing for me. Like I only really want what I fancy. And then it could be like, I could get home from work and if I'm fried from a long day, I'm like, well, what do I want to eat? Like, what do I need? Like, how am I going to, that's a long process. So to stop that like train of overthinking, it's just, I'll have stuff in that I can like have as a backup plan, almost like, well, if I get home and I don't have the energy to think about what I want, I know that I have a freezer tea, like a beige smiley faces and chicken nuggets tea. Or it's like having those like autopilots, I think, for like when you don't have the like you don't want to overthink or you don't have the ability. Like I have certain outfits that like I wear over and over again because it's like I don't have to think about what's going to go together. I just know, and I'm just like safe option. Or like I know that if I'm getting like anxious about something or if I'm getting overwhelmed, my thing is just go for a walk. That's autopilot. It's not what should I do to make myself feel better? Should I meditate? Should I do this? It's just like I know for me the answer to that question is go for a walk, so I don't have to go through the 100 overthinking answers. And
what's brilliant about that is that's deliciously simple.
And
it is, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is simple things that work.
And
that's like, don't reinvent the wheel.
I think it is literally like having almost like the master plan for like what to do when no overthinking is involved. Like I don't even have to ask the question, this is just autopilot, so it can almost like take away the overthinking about that thing, so then I've got the brain space to think about the actual stuff that I need to think about.
And for you, your tools.
I think that at the same time, like you say, sometimes some things can't be oversimplified, right? Some things we can't reduce all the way down, because when you are part of a marginalized community in this world, sometimes, as you say, sometimes our brains are doing that because it has to think of all of the ways to keep us safe, because it has to notice all of the things that don't serve us. But obviously there is the part that does catastrophize as well. So I feel that what does help is, like I said, coming back to the present. So if it's like, you know, all the taps that you need to do to bring yourself back to where you currently are, bring yourself back into your body, that's really useful. So sometimes when I find that I'm overstimulated and I'm starting to overthink, I start like tapping to, you know, and bringing myself back to where I need to be right now, and thinking about things that don't cost anything to do. And my main thing is I am. I don't finish the statement, I just say I am, because it can be anything, but I am really brings me back to here. Like I am just really helps me to center and go from there. Just repeat it over and over again, because I think that that's really useful. It's not about I am beautiful, I am this, because that's also useful, but just the simple I am is enough for me. And that kind of quells all of the noise.
That's beautiful. Write that down. It was gorgeous. And Ben.
Right, can I give you an example of some overthinking that's just happened right now? So
live.
For everyone at home, it is very hot in here. It is really, really hot in here. And TMI, but I am sweating.
Think 180, like 200 gas sticks in the oven. It's that hot.
It's really hot.
I am melting.
And so this is some overthinking in action, okay? Felt myself sweating.
Same.
And you know, everyone, what happens is you're listening to someone talk and you feel yourself sweating. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sweating. And then as you think that, you're like, oh, it's harder now. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I'm sitting there just like, oh, I'm really wet. I'm like soaking. And you know what?
Like that comes from a different kind of audio. If you are wet, do you get
if you've joined us now, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant at all.
It could be though.
Weird conversations have done that.
I might do some overthinking about that later.
I think you've just started a new business. Mental health sex line.
But then you... What's happened? This is meant to be such a serious answer. Right. Hey, it's fantastic again now. It is very hot in here.
Yes.
So, it's getting hotter now.
Yes.
I know.
So when you're overthinking, it's because... it just grows in your head. The thought just expands and expands, and so you get to a point where it just absorbs. Absorbs your whole thinking space, okay? And so you can't see a way out of what you're thinking about. Overthinking, yeah. So you can't see a way out. And so the only way that you can get perspective on it is trying to get out of that cycle, because that's what overthinking is. It's a cycle. You think a thought, that thought makes you think something else, that brings you back to the original thought that's even worse, and you go in cycle. I need to get out. So you were talking and I was just like, I'm just gonna listen, really actively listen, and take myself away from that thought cycle. And then the sweat, well, I'd say the sweat cleared up. It doesn't, I'm still sweating. I'm still really nervous of when this ends and I'm gonna stand up and there's gonna be what's left of Ben on the sofa.
But we won't shame you for that. We'll just like go in your wetness.
God. But it takes you out of that cycle, and then suddenly you can see perspective. And it's the same with everything that's happened in my life. And it's the same with walking. For me, I love running and walking because you're overthinking, and you can get out and suddenly you've got perspective. And people find the same with journaling. Once it's in real form, you're like, what am I getting so anxious about? There it is. That's my problem. And you can see it on, obviously there's issues with lists and then list. But sometimes just writing down how you feel, going out, getting perspective, getting out of that cycle. And yeah, so that's what I would say. Try and get out of that cycle.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. Something
we got there in the end.
I'm so sorry. And Veronica, what do you think you've learned over your years of overthinking that helps you maybe not get out of that system, because I don't think any of us can really, but how do you shift it slightly for you?
Well, I think it comes down to every person is individual, and it's not a one size fits all solution to the problem. And this goes back to the beginning, that one of my coping mechanisms used to be to set goals and then write lists of how to get there. And then before I knew it, that became lists of lists. So then I decided I needed to have a new coping mechanism, which was to just stop, take a breath, go make a cup of tea. And that one didn't work out either. So I think currently for me, I'm kind of treating it more whimsically, and I'm not putting so much pressure on myself to be so serious about it. So I've kind of, like, one of my current ways of coping with it is when I find myself overthinking, I treat it as like a little game where I will make snap decisions.
Okay.
And
it sounds fun.
I mean, that's brought on problems of its own. The anxiety of the feeling of, oh my gosh, I've just decided that. But what I found is that treating it like a game and being a bit more playful with it in my own brain, and just making that yes/no decision and not tangenting off to other possibilities. Yeah. Just red light, green light. It's one or the other. And doing that, I find that a lot of the more mundane, everyday problems are then forgotten about because the decision was made. And the more serious and business ones, I've not figured out how to work my way around that yet. But certainly when it comes to smaller problems, I've found that recently to be a quick fix. I don't know how it will be long term, because it's just a new thing.
I wouldn't overthink it.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that you say that, because I've been reading a lot about when I can't sleep at night, which is often I learn something that I didn't know before. So that's how I use my brain energy. And I've been reading a lot about human design. And I read about generator types, how most times when we're overthinking, a lot of us are existing in the cerebral plane, but we don't go into our bodies enough, where we're kind of encouraged not to be in our body. But if you go into your body and give yourself options, like, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Like, look at the two options. Whatever you feel in your body as excitement, you go towards that thing instead. So actually the snap decisions are pretty good, because and all you can do if you are a generator is just yes or no. Like, how does it feel? Gonna do that thing. If you focus on doing the things that genuinely bring you joy in your body, not in your head, in your body, it's likely that you're making the right decisions.
You know what I always do as well there, very quickly? If you flip a coin,
No.
This is like leaving it to chance. It's terrible. Don't do that. Don't just flip a coin and be like, oh, you know what, I will move house. No. Flip a coin, but really think about how you feel when. So you go, oh, well,
when it lands on the other
let's give an option. I don't know, let's move house or stay in where I am, okay? And you go heads to move house, tails to stay where you are, and flip it. And then when it lands on tails and you have to stay, you feel disappointed. You're like, well, I'm going to move.
Oh my God.
It's a really good way of getting
So I don't have to do what the coin says.
Where you suddenly realise, actually, sorry?
I don't have to do what the coin says.
No. It's just assess
It's
how you feel about the result.
That's what you're meant to do. So do I go out with my friends tonight or stay in? Flip the coin. Oh, I'm going out. Oh, I don't really want to do that.
Great.
And then you're like, I want to. I'm staying in.
That's
right?
really great.
It's a really good way of getting yourself into
I've seen
body.
I've seen that with children, brothers and sisters. One sibling, like when it comes to like the flavor of something, if there's like one option and another option, one sibling will let the other choose, and if they feel upset about that, that's what they want, and that's how they can choose. So it's fun how that comes back. Like as a grown up, we repeat those kind of things.
Another one I've heard is like get to 51%. So like you're never ever going to have 100% certainty. I think it was a video of Stephen Bartlett, but he'd heard it from Barack Obama, so it's coming from wise people. But it was like you're never going to get to 100%. You know, they were saying like, how do you make these big decisions that are like impacting a country, like impacting the world?
Flip a coin.
And it was like you're never.
Let's go nuclear. Yes or no?
And I think it was like
destroyed the world.
You're never ever going to get to 100% certainty. There's always going to be space for overthinking. So if you just aim to get to 51% sure, then that's good enough because it's more sure than the other options. So I feel like that's a nicer one because it's like instead of going for that perfect option, it's like this one's the better option, so we'll just go with better rather than trying to get to that perfect, which is never going to happen.
Incredible. I love that our biggest takeaway from a conversation about overthinking is don't overthink it. Wow. What a salient takeaway point. You're all welcome. Could have just done that in a minute. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I feel like we could have gone on forever. So many amazing points. If you have been affected by anything that we've talked about, #IAMWHOLE has so many amazing resources that you can find other things, other conversations, more resources that might be able to help you. It's so important that you don't struggle alone. That's the whole point of this Digital Detox Day content, is that we're learning from each other. I'm so grateful that we're able to have these conversations. If you have loved what I have done today, I have been Ben Pechey, and if you have not, I have been Liz Truss. Thank you. Bye bye.